Hello, 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 everybody. Good night. Good night. This is the Marcia Week Show. Yes, and we are coming to you live from Barbados. And guess what, people? We had a technical glitch. A technical glitch occurred. That means, we're going to have a fantastic show tonight. And nobody mad but the devil. Not even my little cat, my little thing at the back here won't come up. But this is a fighting show tonight. Tonight, our prayer is that the eyes of Barbadians will be enlightened. We are praying that they will be able to see. I put on my glasses to see that those that are not wearing glasses, that tonight when we are finished, they will put on the glasses, will come on, and Barbadians will be able to see exactly what is happening in Barbados. And we are not going to let anything stop us. So Llewellyn Eiffel, Sir Alfred Benjamin, listen, I am going to ask you because to help us. There was almost 200 persons were waiting on the other link. And so we need your help. We need your help. Lucinda, Judith, Sir Alfred, Llewellyn, please send this link. Take the YouTube link and put it in that show that they were waiting. Can everybody do that for us? And we're going to fight tonight. Tonight is a fighting night. Tonight we are fighting in, there is something called principalities and powers. Okay? And we are fighting it. It's about our mindsets. The mindsets of Barbadians. We need the minds of Barbadians to be opened. We want their eyes to be opened. We want them to begin to think differently. This is why we come on each night. Every time we come on, this is a night for us to be relaxing, right? Why are we on tonight? Is it that we have nothing else to do? No. In fact, a very important member of our family had a birthday today. I'm not allowed to say whose birthday it is, but an important person of our family. But you know what? We're on tonight. We're on tonight because it is important for us to continue to educate Barbadians. There's a saying that says a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And tonight we're asking Barbadians, open up your mind. Open up your understanding to see exactly what is happening in this country. There are lots of people who are hiding and they're doing things. Do you all remember? Do you remember? I'm fighting tonight because I know when there are when we got that opposition. So we've been fighting and they've been fighting us back, right? We understand what is going on. And all that they're trying to happen. Why would they be so afraid of this show tonight? Whatever they're trying to do, let me tell you. We're going to have the show tonight and it's going to be powerful because last year, this time, thank you, loyal daughter. Last year, this time, you know what we were doing last year, this time? And I thank God the diehards are on here. There are some diehards on here. V-Hard, loyal daughter, Jonah, Trevor Seeley. We've got some diehard, Easy D, Pauline Maynard. Listen, let me go back up the top. You know what we were doing last year, this time, Llewellyn Eiffel? We were on this very live here last year. August 1st, 2023. Go back and look at it. We were live. And what were we talking about? It was a pension bill that they were trying to sneak in. You remember that? And they brought it to the lower house. You remember? Yes. And we came on July 31st and August 1st. We thought it was so important that, guess what? I opened up my computer again and I came on, myself and Caswell and Maxine McLean. Yes. And we're on here again tonight. We are on here. It is August 1st, 2024. We're on here tonight, but you know what's different about tonight? There is a different thing that is happening with Barbadians. You see Barbadians now? Barbadians are now speaking out, you know. Did you see that press conference with the Bar Association? Huh? Did you see the lawyers this morning? Did you see Kay Williams and all of them? Did you see that in the newspaper? Was that it must have been, I think it was this morning, because I saw it. It said Thursday. So it has to be right today. Kay Williams and the two lawyers sitting beside. When did you see an organization stand up to the government like that in this country? We have seen so much progress. I was so proud of those lawyers because we have people who are standing up on behalf of the citizens of Barbados. And that's what's so powerful about it. That's what's so powerful about it. And I didn't plan to start this rough tonight. But guess what? Guess what? I realize what's going on. I realize what's going on, yeah. And so we're gonna listen. When the people stand up, the powers fall down. You hear? And we are seeing that happen. When we lose our fear, they are going to lose their power. And that's what Mr. Thorne is trying to talk to us about. That's what Lynette Eastman had been talking to us about on the show. That's what we saw Dr. Sonia Brown doing, eh? And that's what we are seeing the Bar Association doing. That's what we see Monique Tate doing, yeah? That's what we see Trisha Watson doing. That's what we see Ryan Walters doing, Senator Ryan Walters. When we lose our fear, they lose their power. And I tell you, there is an avalanche of something that is coming. There is something that is rising up in this country. I tell you, there is a strength that is coming up from within this country because the people of Barbados, they are standing up, and they're standing up strong and proud. Caswell Franklin, take a bow. Take a bow, Kemar Stewart, Maxine McLean, Rose Carbin, Glenn Murray, Heather Cole, and I'm reading the names before I forget anybody. Barbados thank them. Thank Winston Clark. Thank Lumumba Batson. Thank Bongo Lights. Thank Fred Corbin. Thank all of those that were out there speaking up. And February of this year, we saw Ralph Thorne. Yes? We saw Ralph Thorne cross the floor. And that man crossed the floor and installed 2 senators. And they are working as a team. And we're seeing the strength coming forth in this nation. And someone would say, oh, so you know, that they say, oh, you guys are partisan. But look at Sonia Brown. Look at Sonia Brown. And I'm so proud of Sonia Brown and every BLP person that watches this show. Get up and start to speak out and hold your government to account. Now, that is real. That is being a Bajan. When you're not going to worry about the color of the party or the name of the party or who is in government, but you're going to rise up and you're going to begin to speak, open your mouth wide and speak out. And that is why we're opening up the show tonight. Not because we have nothing else to do. But there is a passion. There is a passion to wake up Barbados. And we've been saying that a year now. And here we are again tonight. Folks, listen, we can do better than that with the sharing. You're going to help us to fight. You're going to have to help us fight. Everybody that was over on the other link, just copy the YouTube link. I know some of you have done it already. Copy the YouTube link and put it over there for us, please. In addition to that, every chat that you're in, Tonight is a night of education. Tonight is a night when the scales will be removed from the eyes of Barbadians. Tonight is where there will be a rumbling in the belly of Barbadians. There will be a rumbling, and it's not going to be gas. But in the belly of Barbados, in the core of us, we are going to rise up and say, listen, we will not live in a police state. Because I tell you, that is what they're seeking to go after. But I tell you, it's not happening in here. No, it's not. So I know Lynette was supposed to be on. I'm hoping, I know Dave is giving her the new link. And so she should be on at any time. Yes, okay, so somebody wants to know if there's a problem. Keep sharing for me, please. Okay, people want to know if there's a new link. Yes, please share, please share, please share. This is the new link. The new link, please share. New link. Yes, we having this show tonight. Come on, fight with me, please. People, stand up and fight with me, please. Where did my flag go? Fight with me, Barbados. Listen. Please share the new link, y'all. Please share the new link. Esther Blue, thank you. This has never happened to us before, but I know. I had my prayers. You know, some of you say, you know, people that serve God, that we use it as a crutch. For me, it's not no crutch, and I don't serve no white Jesus. So don't come and tell me no foolishness. You understand? I have a relationship with God. And I don't take it lightly. It's a personal one. It's not through a church and through a priest and whatever. And my husband and I prayed before we started. And, you know, you had that feeling that something is off. I sat here praying before we started. And one of the guests, I said, I prayed tonight that the scales would be removed from the eyes of Barbadians. That's the prayer. And I read my scripture from Isaiah 61. 1-3 that says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to share the good news with the poor and the brokenhearted, and to set those who are in captivity free. That is my scripture for my life. I don't talk a lot about that on this show because I respect all of our different belief systems. You know, I really don't get into that. I just love everybody and we work together with everybody, as you can see. You know, but I am a believer in purpose. I'm a believer in mission. I'm a believer in destiny. And we're not doing this because of any other reason but that Barbados will wake up. The rest of the Caribbean is depending on us. Where else did they change the age of pension, the pension age? Only here, you know. Every single thing they're testing here. Everything. The first police state. Nobody said me to say it. It's me saying it. None of my guests is saying that. I am saying it because this is what I believe that they're trying. They're trying to call a police state in here. This is a no consultation government. They claim that they have all these consultants that they are paying. But as far as I'm concerned, they're not consulting with the people that matter. That's us. This is a no consultation government. They want a one-party state, and they want a police state. They want a little China in here. Every turn that we turn, they try to take our constitutional rights. Every turn. Go back and look at it. The very republic that we are in right now, we were supposed to have a referendum on it. And they decided that we were not that important. Something like a bail, this here. The average person would believe that, you know what, let's sit down and put this to the lawyers. Let's have a conversation with the lawyers. No. The cybercrime bill, no. All these different bills, no. You heard Money Tate. They don't consult. What do you call that? Stop for yourself and think about it. Okay? I know I'm waiting on my guests. They're coming. Lynette Eastman will be on first, and we're waiting for her. And Mr. Thorne will be on after. We're waiting, but let us chat tonight, because I have a lot on my heart to say to my Barbadian people. Why do you think that is? You ever stop and ask yourself the question? Why would a government tell the people that they're going to have a referendum and they decide that they're not having the referendum? They decide that it's like you're supposed to meet with me and you walk past me and leave me standing there. Think about that. We're supposed to meet and you walk past me and leave me. What is that? In our lives, what do we say? That's disrespect. You're disrespectful. This government has been disrespectful to the people of Barbados. They have disrespected us. That's right, Hasbro. I pay my taxes and I demand respect. They did that with the pension bill. The cybercrime bill. The child protection bill. They didn't even consult with the child care board. No, they didn't consult with the lawyers again in this country. Huh? This is a no consultation government. And a government that does not consult with the people or with those arms in society that represent the people, that is a dictatorship. I said it, and you can go ahead and try to get me off. Get me off again tonight. Do what you need to do. That's what that is. And so tonight we are seeking to educate Barbadians. And Dave, just let me know if everything is good. Everything isn't good. Okay, what's happening? Okay, but I'm talking to Dave at the same time. We're having trouble getting our guests in. I am not giving up tonight. The link that you gave, you're in, Dave, did you give them that link? This is listen, folks, you who know how to pray. Listen to me. They feel that they could stop this here tonight. Yeah. Whatever you all are doing, it is not going to work tonight. You hear what I tell you? Barbados, let me tell you something. This is the way how I've lived my life. Dave, what's happening? Okay. So, folks, we are seeking to get this thing resolved. I had to, those of you just joined, I've had to change the link for the YouTube link for the show because something happened. We don't know what happened. And now we've created a new show and our guests are not able to come in on the show. Nothing has changed with us with StreamYard. I am on StreamYard speaking to you now. Dave is on StreamYard. You can't see him, but he's on using the same link that he's sending to them. So I am not sure what is happening. So I'm while you share, while you share, I'm going to work at this as well, and try to see what the challenge is. Okay, but I need you to share, and I need you Barbadians to understand that we're not wrestling with flesh and blood here. Okay, so you're going to tell me that has never happened before. Okay, so we're going to play cross the floor. We're going to play cross the floor while we wait. Okay, so let's have cross the floor while we wait. Folks, this is a good time. This is a good time to share. Yes, 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 yes. Right, that is so true. We got distracted and didn't even get to play the national anthem. So because we were trying to get everything fixed. So so we'll play the national anthem first. Dave, we're gonna do the national anthem first, and then we're going to do cross the floor. Okay? So let's play the national anthem first. Yes, 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 yes. And I didn't have my flag because we were warring while making sure we can get our guests in. And I'm seeing one in already. So I know that it's working. So one person is in and she's smiling. So you know who it is. I said she. So you know who it is. And she's gonna come in very, very, very soon. So all of this is happening now. And let me just thank everybody for sharing. Come on, guys. How many likes do we have tonight? Yes, 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 yes. Oh wow, yeah. So tonight is a night of education. Tonight is a night of motivation. Tonight is a night of mobilization. Tonight is a night of agitation. And I'm saying to us all tonight that the scales will be removed from our eyes. So we have to get ready. Make sure you're not distracted. Make sure that, you have shared. You've done your part, okay? You have done your part. Like up the show. This is important. We're in war, guys, and we're fighting for our country, for the soul of our country. We're ready. We're ready. All right. I think I see Miss Eastman. If she's ready, let me see that thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, I don't think she's ready yet. I can't see any thumbs up from her. So I think she's settling herself. Yes. So, guys, and as I said, as I was saying earlier, that we have made, you see, you never let people feel comfortable. Don't let people get too comfortable. Even when you have friends, don't let them get too comfortable with you, because when people start to get comfortable with you, there's a saying that we have in Jamaica. They start to take liberty with you. You say that in Barbados. You start to take liberty with you. They want to wipe the foot on you. You understand? They pass and they poo-poo on you. They do all kinds of things with you, When you allow them, they take liberty with you. All right? And I believe that's what is happening here. I believe that. Because, these people, someone said to me, that they are planning, they heard from good sources, they're planning elections. And one of them said, oh, we're winning again. They know it for a fact. You see how they see us? We here suffering. They don't consult with us. They disrespect us. Huh? And they could be so sure that they're going to win again. You see what I'm telling you, Barbados? But I tell you, listen, our ancestors trying to tell us something, If we ever let a government again get 30 seats, I tell you, the ancestors rise up and give us lashes. Huh? We're going to walk to the polling stations and put ourselves into slavery. I pray we never do that again in this country. Never. Never, 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 never give them 30 again. Never. Because they're taking liberty with us. You hear what I tell you? You never. Make sure we don't do that again, Barbados. Let me see if Miss Eastman, I think she's ready. I think she's ready. Pleasant good evening, Miss Eastman. How are you? She's not hearing me. She's not hearing. Good evening, Miss Eastman. Not hearing. Okay. Let me get her sorted out. We're not hearing her. Dave. All right. So we're gonna get that sorted out. Having all those challenges tonight, they're very strange, right? Listen, my people. Oh, Cheryl Jolly. Oh, how you doing? How you doing? God is good. Is right. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, good to see you. Good to see you. Oh, my Lord. Let me just welcome everybody. Let me welcome everybody. Wonderful Jabard. It's great to see you tonight. It's great to see you tonight. Folks, okay, so she's left the studio and coming right back in, but we are not giving up we are not giving up. We are not giving up, my people. We are staying strong tonight. Correct, Aaron. Correct, Aaron. They're trying to turn this into a police state. That's what they're trying to do. Yeah. Okay, so she's back in, and we're going to test this again. Good night, Lynette. Can you hear me now? Yeah, so just unmute.
Yeah. Yes,
Oh,
good night. Good
Good
night, Marcia.
night.
Good night to everyone that's here with us.
Yes, wonderful. Listen, we're in a fight tonight. You know that. Yes, but it's good to see you again. Last year when we started out, it was, you were right there in the midst with us, with this pension bill, and here we are with this. You remember when they were trying to pass it off in the middle of Kadooment? You remember that
Yeah,
whole story?
yeah. That's true. That's true. And
Isn't
I
that true,
know,
Lynette?
yes, that's correct. That's correct.
And you
Um,
were right here on the show with us, trying to get the scales off the eyes of Bajans.
well, it's a process, and it's interesting. This is Emancipation Day that we're remembering, and I gave it some thought. And one of the things that we don't one of the things we don't celebrate actually is activism. And without activism, you never would have had emancipation.
Mm,
It really was a number of individuals who were engaged in activism of one sort or another. And sometimes we don't understand that activism comes in different guises.
mm,
Everybody can't do the same thing. I was talking to someone about an issue recently, and he says, well, I don't shout, but I'm going to make some calls. So that's his way of doing it. So you might not see him on the road or anything like that, but he's going to do what he has to do. So people have their different ways of being activists. But of course, it is important too to be visible and to speak loudly and clearly when you need to
mhm.
do so. And that is what quite a few Barbadians have been doing. I think going back to COVID, when many Barbadians felt that their rights were under threat, there
Yes.
were a lot of Barbadians who got out there and marched on behalf of the Barbadians who weren't sure what was happening, who weren't sure what to do. But I believe that those individuals who got out there did something on behalf of all Barbadians.
Yes,
So now
most
we,
most definitely. And yeah, I was saying that is most definitely so, and I believe that we, as you said, it's a it is a process, and people more and more you find people are speaking out.
yes,
I was saying earlier that I saw in the newspaper where the bar association, I mean, they didn't just write something, Miss Eastman, but they did a press conference. And whatever we think of the bar association, the point is that they are standing up for something, and we need to celebrate that, as you said, celebrate activism,
yes,
celebrate people speaking out. I think that is so important, and we're seeing there is an improvement in that, don't you think?
yes. I think so. But maybe we are going back to what used to be before, because there were many activists before.
Hmm.
The difficulty is that while children learn of what should I say, our elite politicians at school, they don't teach them about activists.
Mm.
So they don't even know that activism exists. They don't know that many of the actions taken by politicians, which were good actions, were actually forced by activists.
Hmm.
They had to respond and do something. But a lot of these things came from activists and from various people, because I've been doing some reading and looking at our history and seeing that there were individuals in the 1970s especially who somebody like Leroy Harewood. The majority of Barbadians have never heard that name, but that he was definitely an outstanding activist in Barbados. People like Eric Seeley, we managed to lampoon him to the extent that we don't think he's important.
Mm.
People like Bobby Clark, people like Calvin Allen, people have never heard of him being an activist. Um, John Connell, all of
Mm.
these individuals. And, we go back. So we've heard about Bussa, but there are lots of other people. There's Franklin, there's General Green, there are the Dothan brothers, all of
Wow.
these people, even with names that we would recognize these days. I know people who are Dottans, perhaps they're descended from the Dothan brothers who were on the ground engaged in rebellion in Barbados before emancipation. And these people would have helped to cause emancipation to occur. So, and what I think too, that Barbadians have to recognize, you see, when you don't know your history,
Yes.
you don't see it being repeated. So this bail act actually raises a lot of issues for me. A lot of issues. Yes, there's the erosion of constitutional rights. There's the procedure being used in Parliament, um, where which leads one then to understand that many of the parliamentarians either do not know how a democracy is supposed to function, or they don't care, because you you really just it is what should I say, it is not democratic to just rush legislation through the parliament because you want it passed. The kind of democracy that we have is that we elect individuals to go to parliament to represent our interests. So before they vote on a bill, they're supposed to ask us what we think. And certainly you can't do that in one sitting. You can't do that. And it isn't a matter of just picking a few people to ask them what they think, because I've heard parliamentarians saying, "Oh, I met with this particular politician. I met with the leader of this." It's not about meeting with them. It's about meeting with the people. And in so many instances now, with legislation coming through, apparently the legislation suddenly must be done in a rush, and there's no effort, or very little effort, to engage the people. Now, I'm not even saying that if you had tried to engage the people, I'm not even telling you that 10% of the population of Barbados would have attended any session that you had.
Yeah.
But you have to respect the people and give us the opportunity to attend. And everybody isn't going to attend everything, but people will attend if they have a particular interest in a particular area. So we didn't go through that process. Then there's the issue of crime. And there's issue, and this is a regional issue now. The I don't know if you're still hearing me.
Yes, I'm hearing you. You seem to be sticking a little bit, but I'm not sure. We're gonna press through, Lynette. Keep going.
Right. Okay. I was making the point that CARICOM has the highest murder rate in the world. Now that came as a shock to me, because I guess I too, um, you know, there's a what there's a way that we present ourselves, that we live in idyllic conditions, we live in paradise, you know. And so I had to say, someone, I was part of a discussion, a group where we actually had a professor who has done a lot of research and continues to do research in this area. And I was there saying, but how did we get here? How did this happen? How could we possibly have the highest murder rate in the world? I mean, look at all the other places out there where people are killing each other. How did this happen to us? So, you know, that is an issue, which this bill draws to our attention. And the biggest issue as well is, how do we address these issues? Now, as a lawyer, I can tell you that my belief is that legislation cannot solve every problem in Barbados. It's an easy fix. It's an easy fix to say you have done something by passing legislation. But I think that when individuals are in the throes of doing these things, they're not, um, when they're in the throes of doing these things, they're not thinking about whether they get bail or not. So, yes, we need legislation, but legislation can't solve all of our problems. And I am surprised that more people are not talking about the fact that we actually have a breakdown in society, and we need to get back into the communities and rebuild them. I'm not talking about building them, because I know that we tend to be nostalgic about how things used to be in the past. I'm not saying that we go back there, but there are principles that are back there that we need to get to. When people tell you that it takes a village to raise a child, they're correct. The village might not be the old time village we know, but each child needs several individuals around him or her in order to get them to be a citizen that contributes effectively to the society. So these are some of the issues that I see arising from our consideration of the passage of this Bail Act.
Yeah, well, as you said, that sometimes we want to pass laws, and we think that that is the way that is going to happen. I mean, we do need, it can be a deterrent when we know that you're not going to get bail, or it's going to be hard, very hard for you to get bail. It can be a deterrent. We understand that. Now, as you look at the Bail Act, Ms. Eastman, there I hear the leader of the opposition. I hear Monique Tate, and the different senators speaking about some of the constitutional issues with the Bail Act. What can you break down for us? What about this Bail Act that the average citizen needs to be aware of or needs to be concerned about?
Well, I think the story of the Bail Act starts with an amendment to the Bail Act in 2019. So there was an amendment to the Bail Act in 2019, which in effect said that you could not have bail if you committed an offense and you were charged with certain offenses. I'm looking for the exact right. So this particular provision, this amendment, Section 5A of the Bail Amendment Act,
Okay, Section
stated
5A. Let's see
Yes.
if we can find that here. Yes, go
So,
ahead.
so
We're gonna.
that's the old act. That's an act of 2019.
Okay, so not this one. Yes, I saw
Not
that
this
online
one,
today.
because the story starts with an attempt by the government before, um, in 2019, to what I guess they would call strengthen the Bail Act. And basically, this amendment said that if you were involved, it said a person charged with murder, treason, high treason, or an offense under the Firearms Act, which is punishable with imprisonment for 10 years or more, shall not be granted bail unless a period of 24 months has expired after the person was charged. So basically, you could be remanded for 2 years without access to bail. So you
Mm-hmm.
understand what that is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And because sometimes, when we talk about a firearm offense, we believe that everybody who might be charged with a firearm offense is necessarily somebody out there who wants to attack somebody with a gun. But individuals tend to get involved in situations where they are in a car with somebody and the person has a gun. The person might get out of the car and they're left in the car with the gun. Now, if the police finds them with the gun, well, and it isn't licensed to them. Well, it's not licensed to them because it's not their gun, but they're in the car with the gun. They could said to be in possession of a firearm with bullets. So this could happen to a young fella in a car with another young fellow. It could happen to a girlfriend in a car with a young fella. It could happen to mommy in a car with a young fella. So because it isn't for the police when they charge the person, it isn't for the police to determine guilt or innocence. The police sees a situation,
Mm-hmm.
and what they do is charge the person after interviewing them based on the facts. But they're not a judge, they're just charging the person. So when the person goes before the court, they have a
Right.
charge against them. It's now for the judge, it's now for the DPP to determine, well, do we really have a case or not? It's for the judge, it's for the jury to determine these things. So the situation is that you could be charged with an offense, but ultimately you may not be found guilty. Or while it looks at offenses where you could be subjected to 10 years in imprisonment, it may be that the type of offense, when everybody looks at all the circumstances, that really maybe you get time spent, maybe you get 6 months, whatever, it may not actually be 10 years. So this particular amendment, there was somebody who was refused bail, and his lawyers. So this case is called Jones against the Attorney General. So this case went to court, and this is why I say to individuals all the time, sometimes people say, "Oh, lawyers can go to court," but you actually need a claimant. If I were to go to court, I can't be the claimant. So you need somebody to be the claimant. So Mr. Jones was the claimant in this matter, and a constitutional action was brought. And the court actually struck down that section 5A, saying it was unconstitutional. And I took the opportunity, um, right. So the court, in effect, in its decision said that the court declared Section 5A of the Bail Amendment Act, which I spoke of before, which said that if the offense is one of those high treason, a firearms offense, etc., that the restrictions imposed by Section 5A against the right of a person charged with an offense to be granted bail have not been shown to be proportionate to any legitimate aim attributed to the enactment of Section 5A. Because if you think about it, it doesn't, that provision really doesn't make any sense. If the person is entitled not necessarily to get bail, but to be considered for bail, why would you lock them up for 2 years before they're considered for bail? And the thing that is so worrisome about that is that that piece of legislation went through several hands, I am sure, because it has to. The process for legislation is that it arises, the issue arises with the politicians. They say we need to do something. It goes to the office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel for drafting. It comes to the cabinet for consideration. It should go to the political parliamentary groups of both the Barbados Labour Party and, well, at that time, the Democratic Labour Party didn't have anybody in parliament. But I would say that they should still have had an interest in which bills were being passed. Because if you're interested in people, you're not just interested because you're sitting in the parliament. You would be interested too as to what is going on with your fellow Barbadians, and being in a position where you have access to these things and you are knowledgeable. You should have some Barbadian along the line, some Barbadian who looked at this act should have said, but there's something wrong with this piece of legislation. And basically the court found that the provisions are without justification and as such are inconsistent with the Constitution. That's what the court found. So I want
Ms. Eastman, just pause a bit. So you're saying that under this same administration, they had an amendment of the sorts to the Bail Act in 2019, and those amendments are not being upheld, can't be upheld now in the courts because it's unconstitutional. Is that what
right.
I'm understanding?
They were struck down by the court.
They were struck down. This same
The
administration.
the the provision in this bail amendment were struck down by the High Court of Barbados. And
Wow.
the government appealed, went to the Court of Appeal, and then you heard, I don't remember which one, but whoever was championing or piloting the New Bail Act said it doesn't look as though it makes any sense appealing what was struck down. So therefore, they formulated a New Bail Act. So this is where the New Bail Act comes from. So
Oh,
I think
wow.
that is part of the story that we mustn't forget. An attempt was made before. The
Hmm.
courts found it was unconstitutional, struck it down, which means that it would no longer be of any effect. The government sought to appeal, and my understanding is that the appeal was heard, but as far as I know, no decision has been given. But in the interim, the government said, which would know you'd be talking about the executive, the cabinet said, no, what we will do is we will formulate a new bail act which is consistent, which we hope to make it consistent with the Constitution. So that story, I think, is important.
Yes, and now I think that people can understand Miss Eastman, why the Bar Association is so strong against this, because they would have encountered a similar situation in 2019, and to think that the same government would go again and do a similar thing. Do you think that that might factor in? Because when I heard them today, they were so strong.
So the important thing is, and it's going to take a lot of work. I don't expect it to happen. Well, then again, well, let me not say that. Sometimes things can happen. Change can come in a short period of time as well. Um, but I would like that whenever Barbadians hear that the Constitution is going to be amended, that they should sit up and pay attention. Don't just listen to um, what is going to be said to sell the bill. Sit up and pay attention, because the Constitution um, has provisions in it, and most countries, some countries don't have a constitution, but all countries have what is called a Bill of Rights. Um, and the concern amongst people in the legal fraternity and others is that you continue to try to erode these rights. So, if I may, let me spend a little bit of time explaining about the Constitution and your fundamental rights.
Yes.
I've had discussions with friends of mine about the fact that individuals who whose ancestors, as far as they know, were born free, have a different attitude
Mm.
from those who remember that our ancestors were, I would not even say the ancestors that were born into slavery, but the all practically all of the people who were ever transported to Barbados, they had to ask permission to do things. So this idea of being born free is something that isn't natural to us. That's what I would say. But there are other people in the world who the idea of being born, they just get up on mornings and do what they feel like. There's some laws that they accept because they say, well, yeah, if I drive on the wrong side of the road again, an accident. But these things like even being a creative, even the technology and all that, they do that because they feel there are no restrictions. And Barbados, if somebody were creating something, developing something, they would feel that they have to go to a government agency to ask them if they could develop it first. And in the meantime, somebody done thief the idea from you. So anyhow, the Constitution of Barbados has provisions for our fundamental rights. And I would just list a few of them, and I will explain the kind of structure. So you have a
Right.
right to life, you have a right to personal liberty, you have protection from slavery and forced labor, protection from inhuman treatment, protection from deprivation of property, protection from arbitrary search or entry. That's why people have to get a warrant. Freedom of conscience, freedom of expression. All of these rights we have. Now, we would know that there are going to be exceptions to these rights. So there's a general exception. For example, none of these rights prevents the legislature from passing legislation for peace, order, and good government. So this is why, even though you have a right of freedom of association, etc., you know that there's certain um, ways that you must do things. For example, certain ways that you must use the road. Um, Deprivation of property, a big one, because we pay taxes. So
Yes.
you have those general exceptions for peace, order, and good government. And you would also find that when you look at the Constitution, you're protected from being deprived of property, but the Constitution also says that you can be taxed.
Mhm.
So, and while we say this, we still have to understand that the Constitution at the outset gives us broad freedoms, then it has limited exceptions.
Yes.
Now, whenever you have legislation, then that is going to act in a way that is inconsistent with the fundamental provisions of the Constitution, it means that you're narrowing the rights of citizens. Every
Mhm.
time you do it, you're narrowing the rights of citizens. And look, that bill was passed, and there was no uproar till Mr. Jones went to court.
Aha.
Nobody was paying nobody was paying any attention to it. And let me tell you, there are other pieces of legislation out there and other things that are being done that I believe to be unconstitutional. There are certain pieces of legislation that if you owe money, it allows the institution to submit um, what is called an unpaid debt certificate. They just submit it, they don't serve it on you, it's submitted to the court. The court said, oh, well, this is true, they stamp it, and there's a judgment against you. I believe that you should always have an opportunity to tell the court your side. In those
Right.
situations, there's no opportunity. But when these pieces of legislation are being passed, quite often we're not paying attention because I guess we're busy doing other things. But I think we have to pay more attention, and clearly, I guess people like me who would find it easier and more natural to sit down and look through a piece of legislation to see if it's in breach of any constitutional rights. I guess there is an obligation on us. I'm one of the people who believe that part of our free education is to share what we've learned with the rest of the community in all areas. So everybody who has access to, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, you could go to the Polytechnic and learn about what's the best thing to do with a house during hurricane season. You should come and come on this show and share that information with the rest of Barbadians. So that's how the Constitution is set up. It gives you freedoms. There are limited exceptions. So you might have you have a right to personal liberty, but if you commit a crime, we've agreed that you can be locked up for it. So there are exceptions. So that's how it is. So the point is that when you're doing something as important, it isn't just simply passing the legislation. It isn't simply that you must pass it in a way that is consistent with the Constitution. It's not just those things. It is whenever these things happen, and whenever you hear about the Constitution, it is making your rights, the rights that you have within Barbados, is making them narrower. And I think we have to develop that culture when we hear that they're doing something with the Constitution. You just hear they're doing something with the Constitution. We want to know what they're doing. We want a discussion about it. That's how it has to be, and everybody has to engage in that. Everybody has to engage in that. You might not be able to go through, and many people can, because Barbadians, if a piece of legislation is important to Barbadians, they come to know the legislation better than many lawyers if it's important to them. So I think the Constitution has to become one of those documents that is very important to us. So like when I'm teaching taxation and I say to students that taxation is a concession that the people have made to the government to take money from me. That's what it is. It's a concession. It's not right. It's a concession because we're saying, yeah, we know. Well, I don't want to patch. I don't. I don't want to patch the portion of the road by my house. So, and my neighbor patched the portion by them. So we said, okay, we will pay the money. The government will accumulate it, and they'll patch the whole road. They'll fix the whole road. That's the whole idea. But you have to have in mind that it's a concession, and therefore you should be careful. So, for example, we have a, a piece of legislation called the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act. When you look at our Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, is an old piece of legislation. No modern country, and we like to call ourselves world class, no modern country operates using that piece of legislation. We've used that the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act comes about because you have an appropriations bill where you pass legislation so the government can collect the taxes. But sometimes there is an interim period where the appropriations bill has not been passed, but government wants to continue to collect because you don't want to stop. I think some of you might have heard in the US they're talking about shutting down the government because Congress hasn't passed the legislation, all that kind of stuff. So we have a provisional collection of taxes, which means you can continue to collect the taxes. But that piece of legislation is not meant to be used to impose new pieces of legislation. Because as I'm saying, you always have to be careful when you are going to deprive a citizen of its rights, and it must be done in the proper way through the legislature. So that's not usually for new taxes that are imposed. It's just for you to continue to collect the ones that you were collecting before. But nobody
Yeah.
pays absolutely nobody pays any attention to that. So there's so many things. Now, one of the major concerns has been how the whole process was treated in Parliament. But
Yes.
I've had to say to individuals, this has been going on for years because as we were discussing
And
earlier,
we have another, we're not, just another 7 minutes in this section. Believe it or not, we're coming up to 8:30. You see how time flying?
yeah,
It is so
okay.
interesting. But go ahead. Yes.
So I what was I talking about? The
You were saying how
the
the
process,
parliament, the
yes.
process in parliament. Yeah.
The process, yes, where I you've heard senators complain about it, and well, you don't hear the lower house complain about it as much, I suppose, because the expectation, I guess, is that the Senate is just going to rubber stamp whatever the lower house did. But there have been cases in the past, and and it isn't that you were trying to embarrass the lower house, but that's the reason you have a lower house and an upper house, so it gets vetted twice. And there are bills that have had to go back in the past, before this administration, way back. It's just a normal party process. But this idea now that you don't give bills an opportunity to circulate
Hmm.
in the public sphere, you just send it to parliament, you got the first reading, second reading, whatever, you pass it and it's gone. No, that's not how legislation is supposed to be passed at all. You can do it, And this is why
So
when,
let me ask you, I want to ask a question there, Lynette. So was this normally done like in previous administration? Is this a norm for the for the bill to be circulated, and the people have access to it then before
yeah,
it goes to the lower house and to the upper house?
yeah. Well, let me see. I have a friend that says to me all the time that Barbados has seen its best days, and they will not come again in his lifetime. Well, I mean, he isn't 30, so um, maybe we still have hope.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that there has just been a degeneration over time. I will not point to any one administration and say this administration did it this way and this. I think over time, people have just become less disciplined in everything that they're doing. So back in the day, I mean, we can use the internet now, so the bills can be posted on the website. But the truth is, unless they're actually sent out, you may not know.
Let's see it, yeah.
But back in the day, the all the bills used to come out in the Gazette. There was something called the Gazette,
Mm-hmm.
and the Gazette and legislation were always cheap, relative, well, cheap. They cost a matter of cents or a dollar or something like that to get the legislation, the bill. And the whole idea behind that was that the ordinary man, if he wanted the bill, it shouldn't cost him an arm and a leg. He can go and get it, or you could buy 10 and give to people. Well, now they're on the internet, they're free. So, but that used to be done before. The idea of a period of time to circulate the bill was respected. So quite often when people say to me that is the Westminster system that is killing us, that is not true. It's our corruption of the Westminster system and our failure to improve upon it, because they don't do these things in England. When legislation is passed in most of the developed countries that I know of, that I'm familiar with, which would be Commonwealth developed countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, England, whatever, the bills are in public circulation for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody discusses it. The university, and if it's important, something important like this, you're going to have associations discussing it. And in those countries, there are going to be associations for victims. There are going to be association for perpetrators. You're going to have the universities. Everybody will be commenting on this bill for, I don't know, a good couple of months. And they're all
Yeah.
they're going to be on the TV, they're going to be on the radio. People are going to write articles and publish them. That's what happens in the world class world that we want to belong to. But in Barbados, you just decide that you want to pass a bill, and you want to rush it through. The the cyber crimes bill, apparently it was said that they needed to do that for World Cup. Well, World Cup come and gone, and Barbados hasn't devolved into madness, you know. So like it is blatant disrespect for the ordinary people of Barbados, for the people of
Yes.
Barbados who elected these individuals to represent them in Parliament. They haven't gone there of their own accord. They've
Correct.
gone there because we voted for them, and they're supposed to be there representing us. That's what they're supposed to be there for.
Yes. Well, we have one minute. I mean, this is going so good. It's always an education. Whenever you are on, I mean, I love this show. I have to say, I'm writing so much in my book. I'm going to research some of these things, all these names and these activists that you were talking about. I've learned so much since you've been on. But with the 1 minute left for this show, because I hope you'll come back.
Of
Talk to,
course.
yes. Anything? What's your final words that you have to say before Mr. Thorne comes on and we um, say goodbye? Is there anything that you want to else you want to say to Barbados
Well,
about this
what
program?
I would just want to end by looking at what CARICOM has said about the crime situation in the region. They did a report in 2013. It was called the CARICOM Crime and Security Strategy for 2013. And just bear with me, I want to say, I just want to read it. The statistics do show that the Caribbean has some of the highest numbers when it comes to involvement in violent crime by the people. A 2013 CARICOM paper identifies that the Caribbean has one of the highest homicide rates in the world. 30 people killed for every 100,000 inhabitants, compared to a world average of 5. You see that? And they go on to say the criminality perpetuated by these threats, so they talk about threats, is driven by the desire and pursuit of profit, power, and prestige. So all the boys that you see running about the place that we blaming for all this crime, I don't see them got a lot of power, profit, or prestige. The criminals are supported by the facilitators, which consist of unscrupulous and corrupt professionals within key sectors of the economy, such as the financial, legal, justice, law enforcement, and security, public officials, and government officials who help them to secure and conceal their assets. It is the facilitators who operate both in the licit and illicit world who shield organized crime and allow it to flourish. There are also a range of social factors that enable and support this criminality, including large economic disparities between the people, poverty, the rising cost of living, social exclusion and marginalization, unemployment, and multiple governance failures. So this isn't anybody outside of CARICOM talking about CARICOM. There's a CARICOM report. So when we continue to feel that legislation alone can solve our problem, you see what CARICOM said the problems were. So it
Exactly.
can't it can't be legislation alone. It can't be a bail act. We have problems that politicians refuse. I'm not going to say fail anymore. They refuse to address within our communities. And I'm beginning to feel that it is because the powerful people in Barbados feel that they need an underclass that they can manipulate, whether it is with guns, whether it is with drugs, or whether it is with money. And that's what's happening. And they're destroying the fabric of our society. And the people need to say that it is time for it to stop.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
that's all that's all I wanted to say.
Well, you're just pausing tonight. You're pausing tonight because we need to go back into that CARICOM report and to go through what the recommendations are. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, and everybody is just thanking you for the information. And it's great to have you on the show again. And I know you will be back. Okay.
I
Thank you
will be
so much.
back. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Dave.
Yes.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Wow, what an education we're having on the show. I mean, I've been writing. I still like my book. I still like a book. And it said composition. I have an old fashioned book here. And I've been writing in it, and I have several, and I've learned so much. I don't know about you, but I have learned so much tonight because I saw the 2019 amended Bail Act, and I was trying to understand why they had this one and now they have that one, and she was able to explain all of that to me. I saw it today, but I didn't really understand what I was looking at. So this is so good. I love this show, I have to say, because I learned a lot from it. Well, my wonderful people, we have a gentleman that is going to join us at this time. But I think Dave, how about we play that song? We play at least a verse of that song before he comes on. Dave, how about we do that? We play a little of that song. Yes. Yes, very much so. I'm not sure if we're going to get that to happen. Waiting to see if we can get that happen. In the meantime, guys, continue.
Dancers, come forward, walk out. This one I got worldwide.
Just days after former government backbencher Ralph Thorne crossed the floor, he's taken the oath of office as leader of the opposition.
Cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Wait there, Ralph Thorne. Dancing, come back again. Our turn is the latest trend. Everybody know link up my friend. This one designed to be
and more will be left over.
Dancing, come back again. Our turn is the latest.
Are these trips so important?
Link up my friend. This one designed to be living our men.
Yes, I'm for real, member. I am for real. Don't let me talk out your business. Don't let me talk out your business. All right.
And I can't decide, so I'm moving with the die. Cause I'm ready to mash up the party. Oh gosh, I can mash up the party. So let me do this now. Cause I'm ready to mash up the party. Oh gosh, I can mash up the party. Yes, yes. So let me go now. Cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor.
There has to be some order here.
Cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph.
The Minister of Finance is not party to this present transaction, Your Honor. Ask him to keep quiet, please. And I say to you further, Mr. Speaker, that my conscience, my location here is related to my conscience. I said it last year. It is well with my soul.
Take a wine on the left side, and I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide, moving with the tide. Take a wine on the right side, take a wine on the left side, and I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide. Cause I'm ready to mash up the party. Oh gosh, I can mash up the party. So let me do this now. Cause I'm ready to mash up the party. Oh gosh, I can mash up the party. Yeah, yeah. So let me go now. Cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne.
That is my man, so whether he cross or in cross, he will always be there for us.
I came to a point where I had to take the decision that if my philosophical and political views do not accord with those of government in terms of its legislation, in terms of its policy, the relationship becomes untenable.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Listen, Mr. Thorne, welcome, 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 welcome. It's good to have you here tonight. And I saw you watching the video. Were you shaking a leg there? Were you shaking a leg? I'm teasing you. Somehow I can't hear you. We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you. Oh no. Okay, we're not hearing you. Okay. So say something again, sir. Yeah, what's happening tonight? So what we're going to ask you to do, the same thing happened with Miss Eastman. If you could leave and come back, leave. All right, leave. Yes, leave the studio and come back in. Hello, good night, Mr. Thorne. Okay. Yeah, yes. We're gonna get it. It will be fine. It will be fine. This is the same system we came on last night. Nothing has changed, but that's okay. Listen, how many of you are very, very happy Mr. Thorne crossed the floor? How many of you happy about that? Let me see the thumbs up um in the comment section. How many of you happy about that? And happy with the work that he's doing. Mr. Thorne, good night. Good night. Not hearing you again. Not hearing you. Okay, so Dave is going to give you a call and we're going to see what is happening there. But, yes, aren't you happy? Aren't you happy? Yes. People putting up thumbs. I mean, when you hear, and this is why I say to people, loyal daughter, 66, Hurricane Right, everybody, they're happy he's crossed and happy with the work that he's doing on behalf of the people of Barbados. You didn't hear me mention anything about a party yet. You understand? He's a leader of the opposition for the entire Barbados. Right, I know he's part of a party, but he is the leader of the opposition for the entire Barbados. And the moment he misses that, then he's going to get into trouble. And from what I can see, Pamela, I see Mr. Thorne is doing his very best. He's working very, very hard, in the parliament. I mean, when he stood up, obviously, it was in the lower house before it got to the upper house. And he was the first one who started, in terms of parliament, started to sound that alarm. We heard him passionate, very, very passionate inside parliament. Yeah. And someone said, oh, does he have to shout that much? He's by himself and he's very passionate about it. He's not shouting. Why is it we love to say people shouting? He's passionate about what he's saying. Yeah? Correct. Anybody else? Anybody else happy? Happy Mr. Thorne crossed the floor and you're happy with the work that he's doing? Yeah? Yes, Adrian Allen said good move. Listen, we're going to get this done tonight. Yes, Bali's happy, but are we supporting him? When the stuff come out, are you sharing it? Are you sharing it with other people? Yeah, important that we support him in word and in deed. Support him. You know what it is? You're the only person standing in there. At least in the Senate, they have two, and then they have independent senators. In the lower house, he's there by himself and God, right? Alice Murray. So we've got to support him. And I often say that's a mistake I made when Atherley crossed the floor. I allow people to tell me, oh, he wasn't real, and I didn't support him. And I made up my mind, I'm not doing that with Mr. Thorne. You can label me what you want to label me. I'm not going to do that with Mr. Thorne. I'm going to support him in word and in deed. Yes, because he's standing up. Yes, VR, he's doing an awesome job. Nobody was doing it, so we're going to stand up. Yes, Angela, you're happy with his actions to date? Yes, and the reason that he's resonating with Barbados is because we could see how real he is, and it's not a put on thing, but he's real about what he's saying to us. When he's in parliament, you could tell that this means something to him. And that is why we're seeing everybody, we're here supporting him, and we're going to keep supporting him. And this is not about worshiping anybody and all of that. No, it's called support. Support. We're going to support him in word and in deed. Right? We're not going to leave him out there. He's talking and then he look behind and nobody be there to support him and to help him. Absolutely not. That's not the kind of Barbadians we are. Yeah, we're going to stand there. We're going to support him. You see how many thumbs up? I hope he's seeing all of these thumbs up, the people appreciating the work that he's doing. Somebody says, I'm not only happy across the floor, I'm ready to vote. I hope Mr. Thorne seen all these thumbs up, I know he doesn't do it for that, but it encourages to know the people appreciate what he's doing. Oh my goodness, he's back. Let me see if we can hear him now. Everybody pray. Hello, Mr. Thorne.
Hello, Mrs. Weeks. How are you?
Yes. Emancipation. Freedom.
Thank you.
Leg of the voice. Free the voice. We can hear you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the welcome.
Yes. And I was hoping, sir, you were seeing, all these thumbs up, finger waving. People are, even Easy D, who sometimes is hard on you. Easy D put up one thumb. He put up one thumb. But I mean, people are just, and people are happy with your senator's pick. I mean, look at this. They're just putting up thumbs up and waving and oh my goodness. And it's all over. And it's good sometimes to take stock a bit and to just, just to take it in because you've been working very hard. Very,
Yes.
very hard. One of them called and they said, listen, I don't like the way Mr. Thorne is looking. I want him to rest, I want him to rest. So we are so happy about what you're doing, sir. And when you stand there in Parliament, I want you to know that there are thousands of us standing there with you. You might be there physically alone, but you said it. You said
Yes,
it.
I'm not lonely. Not lonely.
Ah, wonderful. Well, we're looking here on the screen just before we go into the Bail Act, and
Uh-huh.
until this is the first meeting of the Commission on Crime that you have put together, and
Yes.
and that is going very strong. You have people from all walks of society, and not just people, people who are not even in a party, just
Yeah.
people that you believe, and they're all there. And can you tell us just quickly how that first meeting went?
Oh, excellent. We had. I think that's Lamamba you're seeing in the photograph there. And
Yes.
as you know, he is non-partisan. He certainly is not a member of the DLP, and he's not a member of the BLP either. That's Miss Verla de Pisa, the chairman. There's Mr. Bertie Hines. That looks like Maxine. Is that Maxine McLean?
Yes.
We have Reverend John Wesley Carter.
Yeah.
John, he doesn't like me to tell people this because he said it ages him. But John used to be my Sunday school teacher about 10 years ago. I think John would want me to say just 10 years ago. Actually, he was my Sunday school teacher when I was in my teens, sometime in my teens. And he is on the commission as well. So we have a wide range of skills and interests investigating the issue of crime. And as I've said, we don't come to this claiming expertise. We come to ask the public what, in their opinions, are the causes, the effects, and ultimately we want solutions. And we've gone to the public for this. As you know, Marcia, the song says, who feels it knows it.
Yes.
And we apply that principle here, who feels it knows it. So I don't know if we offend the Academy, but I like to say that we have not gone into the University of the West Indies, although we would like if some of the members could be from the University of the West Indies, because we want all interest groups to join in this exercise. Yeah, and it is an exercise that draws on resources beyond the party and beyond both parties. We want people who are out there in the communities who can say something about crime. And crime is so widespread now that we know that there are a lot of people who certainly can say something about the causes. And if we could get somebody from the University of the West Indies, one of the sociologists, one of the political scientists, we'd be very happy. But we have gone, we want to travel from as high as possible within the academy and into the community, because everybody who can say something about the causes and effects and solutions, everyone is an authority, and we are treating everyone as an authority. Those with, as I said, academic experience in the matter, and those with who for whom it is experiential, for whom crime and the commission of crime is experiential. Those who hear the gunshots, those who've lost relatives, those who are avoiding certain streets because of fear. So even those who live in fear, we are treating them as experts. As I said, not only are we looking at causes, but the effects. Those who organize events, parties, those who are restaurant owners, shop owners, who open at night, who now find that business has slowed because people are in fear. That is, so we are hoping to conclude that work. I spoke to Ms. DePisa, and she has, she's an amazing person. She said she would like to wrap it up in a couple of months. A lot of the sessions will be online. I think Lamamba has started to do private sessions as well with people. Obviously, he's going to do this with people anonymously.
Yes.
Receiving information from people as to, again, the causes and the effects. And you know, we make judgments. We make judgments of people who are involved in crime. And the reality, Marcia, is that for a lot of people of social disadvantage, crime is a living. You know, I mean, we can make moral judgments, but sometimes we need to shed our moral judgments and discover why people are involved in crime. And I want to repeat that for some people, crime is the way of, it's a living, you know. That's how some people feed themselves. That's how they clothe themselves. That's how they support their children. That's how they pay rent, the basic things. And if that is the case, we have a responsibility as a society. We certainly have a responsibility, if we are a government, to address the causes, the effects, and the possible solutions to crime. It is with us, it is pervasive, and it is not going to go away overnight. In spite of our moral positions, our moral judgments, it will not go away overnight. And I have said in Parliament that there are, I've categorized them as 4 approaches to dealing with crime. And the first one I had mentioned was the military approach, which is police, BDF. But I don't think Barbadians favor that confrontationalist approach. In some of the other islands, I mean, the police, the way you see the police deal with criminal activity, it is much unlike what we have here. Our Barbados Police Service tends to be somewhat more compassionate in terms of their military approach. So that is one of the broad approaches, and I want to congratulate the police generally for the restraint that they've exercised, because when we watch the videos from the other countries, a lot of Barbadians say, my goodness, our police are soft. I don't think it is that they're soft. We are 166 square miles, and you have to understand the situation of a policeman. A policeman has to go back to his community, to his village, to his neighborhood. He may have a cousin who is involved in crime. He may have a brother living in his house who is involved in crime. So that the compassionate approach that the Barbados Police Service has taken, I think, should be applauded. They work well. They work very hard. A lot of these murders, they've been arresting people. A lot of the robberies, the armed robberies, you hear of the armed robbery, but you tend not to hear that the police service has been successful in apprehending people. So that is the broad approach. That is the first broad approach. I think the police have done quite well, and we must congratulate them, and we must congratulate them all the more because the numbers are small. We have, I think the police service has about 300 persons short. I don't think I breach any national security secrets, but sometimes you go to a police station and the number of police officers available are, you know, you would hope to see a lot more police officers available, so that there's a shortage of numbers, so that when people call the police and they take a little long to come, please understand that there are not as many police officers in this country as there should be, there should be. Anyhow, that's the military approach. The other approach that we need to take in terms of resolving crime is the socioeconomic. We all know that, as I said earlier, crime is economic. People use crime to feed themselves, to clothe themselves, to house themselves, and the society must always find creative ways to elevate people from their positions of social and economic disadvantage. And that continues to be a challenge for all governments. The other approach then is the cultural approach, people's value systems, people's behavior. We had a meeting today, Emancipation Day of all days, and the point was being made, I think indirectly, that the quality of people's education, and education does not occur within the four walls of a classroom. Education, broadly speaking, is about a transmission of values. How do you teach your children what you know? How do you teach citizenship and the essence of citizenship to people? And that is a part of the cultural approach. How music, for example, influences the behavior of young people. And we don't want to go back to that. That is what we discovered a few weeks ago. That really hurts. But the cultural approach, we need us in Barbados. We need to spiritually re-engage not only our children but ourselves. We need to understand what brought us to where we are. What are our strengths? We talked today about self-esteem. We talked today about acknowledging and respecting our own history as a people, where we came from, why we're here. How do we raise our children in an environment in which technology, for example, abuses them? Because we insist, technology is abusive. I'm not an expert, but I suspect that most of what children see on these video games is abusive of them. And there's a philosopher, I always quote him, in the United States. He speaks of a spiritual adrift, a spiritual darkness. But he calls it spiritual blackout. That is happening in Barbadian society. The emphasis is on materialist values. You don't judge a person anymore by the content of his character. You judge him by what he owns. And that is how we are bringing up our children. And if you're defined by what you own, obviously, if you define a child by what he owns, if you tell a child that his entire image or his worth is dependent on what he has, his material goods, he will pursue them because they learn from us. And if we as adults practice that as an example, that it is important to change your car every year, or to wear the latest shoes, or to go to the fects and wear a different outfit. If you go to 10 fects, you got to wear 10 different outfits. A kind of vulgar materialism that has overtaken a country. The music, and I want to pause and say I feel pleased that I've noticed that some of the music this year, some of the people who were obsessed with sex and violence, a lot of them have moved away from that, and that is so pleasing. That they understand now that you can have a good calypso, you can have a good soca tune, and you do not have to sing about sex and violence, because children will hear it. And if children hear about sex and violence, you will see a repeat of the video that shocked us all a few weeks ago. So that the cultural issue, the issue, again, we spoke today, I was asking about how children start the day at school. We were talking to some educators today, just let me say that. And we were asking about how school starts, and we were talking about how, in our day, how school started. And it started with religious engagement, and I don't make an apology for that. Again, you are communicating with children spiritually. What I know, there are some schools in some states in the United States of America that ban the Bible. Now, I don't want to comment on that, but we have a country here that Lynette said earlier that one of her friends says that he has seen the best times. We saw bad times, but I think our generation is a generation of reasonably good citizens. We have an appreciation between right and wrong. We know when we pause, we make decisions. When we're about to make a decision, we always pause. This is our generation. We always pause and say, is it the right thing to do? And even if we do wrong, we still have an appreciation that we may be harming somebody, that we may be doing wrong. But the fact of the matter is we pause. My generation, your generation, Marcia, we pause and ask about the difference between right and wrong. Quite often we do wrong. We are not perfect. But I think we need to redefine ourselves culturally as a society. Who are we? What do we want to be? What do we want our children to be? How do we wish to be represented in the world? What image do we want for ourselves in the world? So that there are several approaches towards resolving this issue of crime that is so pervasive, that has changed Barbadian life.
Yeah.
And we need as a country to confront these issues, to understand the issues, to understand why people commit crime, and to have a sense of compassion. Sometimes we can speak as if we just want to flush criminality down into the deepest well, but there's a reason. And the sociologists will tell you that a lot of crime is rooted in situations of social disadvantage. Of course, a lot of criminality occurs not only because of social structures, but because people predispose themselves to it. They are wealthy people who commit crime. How do you explain that? It doesn't spring from social disadvantage. So that there are, largely speaking, two schools of thought. The structuralist school, which will tell you that some people commit crime because of social and economic disadvantage. And then there's the behaviorist school, which will tell you that it is inside people. A fella as wealthy as he is, he will do something criminally wrong. He will commit what is called white-collar crime. Lynette was talking about taxation earlier. He may commit a taxation offense. He may do insider trading. So criminality does exist in the higher reaches of society. So I've said enough on that.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting, very comprehensive, and I was listening to you, and and remembering that you were one of the first ones who called for the a strengthening of the Bail Act. Right?
Yes.
You started that, and by the next day or 2 days later, the Prime Minister said, "Well, she agrees. You are agreeing with her." I remember that statement. You're agreeing with her.
Yes.
But I mean, you had said it earlier. The point is that it is part of the solution. And what I'm hearing you say is that we have to look at it from a comprehensive standpoint, and not just decide that this is the way and we're going to flush this thing out and here we come, and so but it is the strengthening the Bail Act is important, isn't it, Mr.
Yes, it is. The Bail Act accords with another approach. I've spoken about the military approach, which is the approach, the use of the police and the defense force. I've spoken about the socioeconomic. I've spoken about the cultural. The Bail Act is within the legislative response. That is where government the Parliament has a responsibility. The Parliament passes laws. And let us begin by saying why the Bail Act. The problem that has erupted in Barbados has been that of men committing murder, not for the first time, not for the second time, but sometimes for the third time. And men are committing murder, or they're committing the repeated offense of murder because they were on bail. Okay, a man kills a man, or allegedly kills a man, and he's charged in January. He is remanded, as the court is entitled to remand him, and his lawyer makes an application, let us say a year later, and they grant him bail, and he comes out and he commits another murder. Now, I mean, this is a new and emerging phenomenon in Barbados, and Barbadians who are insulated from these realities would be shocked to hear that these things happen. And it was this, not only, it wasn't discovered this year, but it was disclosed this year or last year, that people who are on bail for one murder offense, they get bail for that. They come out and they commit a second murder. They get bail for that. And they come out and commit a third murder. So that is why the Bail Act becomes the important act. There are several acts that you could amend, but you go to the Bail Act. So that the whole purpose here is to solve that social ill of men who are on bail, to prevent them from committing a second or a third offense. So that's why the Bail Act has been the important act. And that's the reason. So you're trying to solve a problem that has been discovered. Okay, so that's why they use the Bail Act. Now, I've heard opinions as to constitutionality and so on. Just let me say that a lawyer who makes a statement on the law, he is just expressing an opinion. If I make a statement as to my interpretation of the law, that's just an opinion. And 1,000 lawyers can have 1,000 opinions. The law becomes settled only when Parliament says that this shall be the law, and even the Parliament is not the final arbiter as to the interpretation of the law. It is the court that interprets the law and has the final say as to what is law. So I can come here and give you an opinion, but that's just an opinion. 5 other lawyers can come and give you an opinion. That's just an opinion. The ultimate test and the ultimate location as the settlement of law is within the court. And sometimes you go to the court and that is not final, because a court of appeal may reverse the opinion of the High Court. So that I just want to say that every lawyer is entitled to have an opinion. What you must do, though, you must substantiate your opinion. Just let me say, though, that I have not taken the constitutional approach, because I want to suggest to you, if I'm to be consistent tonight with what I said on Tuesday, I have to say to you that my view is that constitutionality arises only in the event or in the instance where I'm accusing the government of stating that this Bail Act amends the Constitution, and I'm going to explain that shortly. But bear with me. I accuse the government of claiming that this act amended the Constitution. If an act of Parliament amends the Constitution, okay, let me give you an example. In 1984, this is the example I always give. You would have heard Lynette speak about the right to private property. Under the Constitution, there is a right to private property. Do we have the time, Marcia? Can I go through this?
Yes.
Good.
You have. Yes, we finished.
Okay, thank you. There is a right to private property, okay, which preserves the right of every person who owns his property to keep that property.
Yes.
Right? In 1984, the government of the day felt that people who had lived on plantation lands, we call them tenantries, and even urban tenantries, that you had generations of people living on a parcel of land. And who was the owner? It was owned by the plantation. And they spent their entire life as tenants. Sometimes they paid, the rents were so low, it was a pittance really. Sometimes they must have paid like $2 a year or $5 a year. So that you would say, well, the rents were cheap and it did not matter. But it did matter, because if they owned the land, although they were paying these peppercorn, we call them peppercorn rents, ownership of the land gave them some value. It gave them something of value that they could use that property, if they owned it, to go to a bank and get a mortgage, get a loan, and improve the house that was sitting on the land. So you found that a lot of, after this act was passed, a lot of old wooden houses became transformed into more comfortable wall structures. We call them board house in Barbados. A lot of board houses became wall houses. So that act was progressive and revolutionary in that sense, that it enfranchised people, it gave people property. But the point I want to make to you is that the government was able to do that because the land belonged to the planter. And a government cannot walk around taking away people's property, as Lynette would have implied. So what they had to do, they had to go to Parliament and pass an act called the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. Now, that Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act gave the tenants on plantation lands and in tenantries across Barbados the right to purchase the land. In other words, the person who lived on the land could demand that the person sell the land to him. Now, that is generally speaking unconstitutional. The government cannot force anybody to give up their property. Under the Constitution, Section 16 of the Constitution says a man should not be deprived of his property. So technically, you were depriving the planter of his property. You were depriving the landlord of his property. So what do? You pass an act of Parliament. You go into Parliament, pass a law, which is called the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. And within the body of that law, it says this act amends, or this act is an exception to Section 16 of the Constitution. In other words, Section 16 of the Constitution, which protects the right to private property, does not apply in this circumstance. You follow?
Yes, following clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
And although it was you could consider it a breach of a person's constitutional right, but politically and economically and socially, it was about justice. It was about social justice.
Yes.
And that is an example that the law sometimes bends to accommodate social justice.
Yes.
Because the law is the law, but the law is man-made. And if man makes law, he can amend that law. He can change that law.
Yes.
But it has to be done it has to be done in a structured way. So that's the long story to tell you that Parliament can pass a law in Parliament which changes or amends or affects constitutional rights. But when they do that, the act must say this amends Section 16. This changes Section 16. My criticism of what the government did on Tuesday, and this is a technical argument. The New Bail Act did not say that. The New Bail Act just said that it is being passed in accordance with Section 49 of the Constitution, and Section 49 of the Constitution gives the power to Parliament to amend the Constitution. This act claimed to be invoking Section 49. In other words, this act claimed in its title that it would be amending the Constitution. But unlike the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, it did not say within the body of the law, this act or this section amends the Constitution. This act, section whatever of the Constitution, does not apply to this act. So that was a technical failure. And the public probably is not interested in that as a technical failure, but it just demonstrates that our government is not perfect. Our government is not perfect in the way that it attains to law, in the way that it passes law. I can bore you further and tell you that Section 49(6) of the Constitution says that if an act of Parliament purports to be altering or amending the Constitution, it must expressly say that.
Right. So,
And
Mr.
it did not say
Thorne, I
that.
have a question here because I'm
Yes,
saying it's a technical failure.
It's just a technical point. I am going to go to the substance of the Bail Act
But
very
I want to
shortly,
ask
but I
you,
just
though,
wanted to
I
say
want to
that.
ask you, would that be something that a lawyer,
Yes.
sometime later, in court, where a lawyer can then use that, that technical failure within the act to say, well, they don't have to abide by it?
He could raise it. I mean, if there's any litigation, if the other side is saying that it altered the Constitution, a lawyer could say, no, this did not alter the
I
Constitution.
got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a technical point. But to the more substantive issue on this question of bail, let the public be aware that the law on bail is governed by something called the Bail Act of 2001. A new Bail Act was passed in 2001. And let us stay within the ambit of the offense of murder and the offenses of guns. Committing offenses by the use of guns. That's really what this entire thing is about. It is not about the minor offenses. It is what the government came to Parliament about this week was to control the matter of murder committed by guns and to resolve a situation in which young men have been running across the country, shooting other people, killing them, going to prison, getting bail, and coming out and doing it again. That is the kernel of this thing. That is what the government has been trying to resolve. And as a parliamentarian, I'm interested in that as well. And that is why I call for it. And I still thank the Attorney General. He said it. He came there and he said that in part it is a response to the call that I made. Of course, I told him I wasn't entirely flattered by that because I think the government felt obliged and constrained to do something. Because if you have in April 7 murders, and by the end of July you have 27 or 28, it means that in a very short time you've had 20 murders. So I don't want to take credit for the government coming to court with a bail act. I think government recognizes, as all people in Barbados recognize, that we have had a spate of murders which makes this society not livable. I mean, it is not pleasant. It is not a pleasant life when you're living in 166 square miles and you have had 20 murders within such a short space of time. So that the government conceded, one, that they came because of a call I made. As I said, I wasn't flattered by that. I think it has more to do with what I described as the social unrest, the alarm that Barbadians are feeling, the fear that Barbadians are feeling. But the point is, they brought the bail act, and that's why they brought the bail act, to resolve the problem of repeated murder. Now, I was telling you that the bail act that we have been using, and this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
We've had a bail act around here since 2001. The government brought a new bail act on Tuesday, which is intended to replace the 2001 bail act. One of the points I made, and I've read them. I read them before Tuesday, although somebody in there accused me of not having read them, but they make some good jokes in there sometimes. And I've read it again. Mrs. Weeks, I want to suggest to you and to your viewers that this new bail act has not done much differently from the old act. I mean, I haven't seen any great fundamental departure from the old act. And I will say something here very shortly as to why I think that is so. Now, but the point is, over a period of time, various parliaments have been making incremental changes to the Bail Act so as to suppress crime. In 2002, I think it was, for example, we were having gun offenses around here as well. And what the parliament did, if a chap had been found with a gun, he used to be arrested, charged, taken to the magistrate's court. And as you know, the magistrate's court is a little less formal than the High Court and more accessible than the High Court, because the magistrate's court sit 6 days a week from Monday to Saturday. You can only get a judge from Monday to Friday in ordinary circumstances. So what they did, they made it more difficult for people to get bail. And in 2002, they amended the Bail Act and said you had to go to a high court to get bail for possession of a firearm. And because, as I said, a chap is arrested on Monday, they take him to the magistrate's court Monday afternoon, and he could probably get bail. You don't get to the High Court that easily. It takes you a few days to get to the High Court. So if a chap is charged, let's say Monday, if he wants to get to a High Court, they used to take him to the magistrate's court first. When this law was made, the magistrate would say, well, you know, I no longer have the power to give you bail. And he had to remand him. He had to send him up to Glenderry at the time, or St. Philip now. He had to send him to prison. And there was a delay between his arrest, his charge, and his ability or opportunity to apply for bail. So that was seen as a bit of a disincentive against people having firearms. It wasn't much of a disincentive because he went to court in the magistrate's court the Monday. The magistrate remanded him to prison. And by the Friday morning, if his lawyer is industrious, he could be in court Friday morning. But the fact of the matter, he would have spent 4 days in prison.
4 days, yes.
Even if he's from the higher echelons of society, he's spending some time up there. He may have the gun, but you can't say he has it innocently, but he may have it not for murderous or criminal intent. He had to spend time in prison. So that was seen as a disincentive. That was seen as a disincentive against anybody possessing any gun. So that amendment was done to the Bail Act in 2002. But obviously, Marcy, I mean, just 3 or 4 days or 5 days in prison, that's no disincentive. So the fellas continued keep having their guns, and the fellas continued going on rampaging across Barbados and robbing and killing people and so on. So that the problem erupted of the Bail Act. The Bail Act says that a person has a right to bail. Yes? The Bail Act says everyone has a right to bail. Now, as I said on Tuesday, and I repeat here, prior to that first Bail Act, which is still the law today, by the way, prior to that first Bail Act, you committed murder, you were not getting bail. You were remanded. Okay? A person who committed the offense of murder, 2 offenses you could not get bail for: treason, and you can ignore that. That doesn't occur around here. Murder. Let's focus on murder. So that if a man kills somebody and the police came, they charged him for murder, the court had no choice. There was no question of bail. Murder, you had to be remanded. So in 2002, Parliament felt, but look, there's some people who are charged for murder, and perhaps it is a fight that the person was involved in. Perhaps it was some other misadventure. And here it is. Everybody knows that he has a good defense of self-defense when the trial comes. Or some people know that he has the other defense of provocation. A man provokes you and he pushing you and he cuffing you, and he gets an unlucky blow and he dies. But the police were charged for murder. And the injustice was that he had to spend time in prison. So sometimes a year goes, 2 years go, and he spends 2 years in prison, goes to the assizes. His lawyer does a good job. The jury does an even better job. He gets off. He's acquitted, but he had spent 2 years in prison. So that Parliament felt that that was unjust. That here it is a man who, for all intents and purposes, has a good defense, except that the law says if you're charged for murder, you must stay up there.
Right, yes.
Yeah. So what we used to do, and I said it in Parliament, and I don't apologize for saying it. One of the things you learn to do is to have good relationships at the bar. And I did something then, and I'll do it now. I paused to pay tribute to the prosecutors that I have known from early in my career. Sir Elliot Belgrave, excellent human being, and Charles Leacock and Olton Springer, now deceased, excellent gentlemen. And we fought hard in court, but we maintain good civil and friendly relationships. So if you have that good civil and friendly relationship with a prosecutor in those days, what you used to do when the police charged the person for murder, I call up Charles, for example. Charles, I don't mind saying that Charles and I did this before. There's a new law coming talking about plea bargaining. We were plea bargaining long before this proposed law. So I would call Charles and say, look, Charles, I have a client here. I want you to look at the file. I want you to look at the statements on the police file. I want you to look at all these statements made by the police and the witnesses and make your judgment and consider that this is not murder, but perhaps it is manslaughter. The man has a good defense. Either he was provoked or self-defense. And Charles would look at it. He would say, look, I think I agree with you. If this comes to trial, I don't think he will be convicted of murder. So what he would agree to do, he would agree to reduce it to manslaughter. And you can get bail for manslaughter. In those days, you could get bail for manslaughter. You could not get it for murder.
Murder,
But
right.
that was an informal system based on the civility that must and should exist between lawyers at the bar, between the prosecutor and the defense lawyer. We carry on bad in court sometimes, and it can get fairly aggressive. But when you leave that courtroom, you respect that the other chap is doing his job to the best of his ability. And because of those good relationships, we were able to, which term should I use? Not manipulate the system, but we were able to have the system accommodate some semblance of justice. That a man who is in prison on a murder charge really should not be there on remand, when more than likely he could be convicted for manslaughter or could get off completely, could be acquitted completely. So we would ask him to reduce the murder charge to manslaughter, which is the power that the Director of Public Prosecutions has. He would reduce it to manslaughter, and then we would make an application to the High Court for bail. Yes. So that happened. That happened. And as I said, it was based on good relationships and good common sense, exercised by the DPP and the defense lawyer. So that that's how it worked prior to the 2002 Bail Act. And as I've said, the 2002 Bail Act comes along, and that is no longer a problem, because a man charged for murder, you can apply for bail. Now, I suppose that was meant to assist persons who had a good defense. But as always, there were people who exploited that. And there were men who said, well, if I can get bail for murder, I'm going to kill somebody. And you have case, I don't know why I'm laughing, it's the way I said it, but they kill once, they kill twice, they kill 3 times. And that is why we are at this point. So that one doesn't want to accuse the government of acting arbitrarily.
Right.
There's a reason the government has brought this at this time.
Yeah.
Because it has been discovered that a few men are killing more than once and coming out on bail and becoming a menace to the society. So because they're a menace to the society, in 2019, the then Parliament, well, 2019, that's just how many years ago? 5 years ago. In 2019, government felt that they should address the problem, because the problem existed in 2019 as well.
Right.
And what they did in an attempt to solve this problem of repeated murder or men committing the same offense over and over and coming out and living among civilized and decent people. So they amended the law, which said to say that a court could hold a man if he's on a firearms offense or a murder charge, on a firearms charge or a murder charge, that the court could, the prison could keep them for up to 2 years. Yeah? To get them off the streets.
Yes.
And as Lynette said, an application was made to the court to deem that unconstitutional, because there's another portion of the Constitution, Section 18, which says a man is presumed to be innocent. All people are presumed to be innocent until a court finds them guilty. Now, I know how the public feels about that, what we call that presumption in law, the presumption of innocence. As I said on Tuesday, you stand up on Broad Street, a man comes down the street, puts a gun to a man, say, kills him, and everybody on Broad Street says he's guilty. But the Constitution says he's not, that he's innocent. And he is innocent until he goes to court and the jury says guilty.
Yeah.
So that because of that thing called a presumption of innocence, the High Court would have ruled Well, if a man is presumed to be innocent, you can't keep him for 2 years mandatorily. In other words, the amendment to the Bail Act in 2019 was saying that the prison, the authorities had a right to keep the man there for 2 years before he could apply for bail.
Mm-hmm.
The court, in exercising its judgment, I haven't read it, but obviously they would have said, but if you say that, that's a prison sentence. If you say to a man that you can hold him for 2 years without a trial, doesn't that sound like a prison sentence to you?
Right.
It does sound like a prison sentence, and it is a prison sentence. If a man has to sit in prison for 2 years before he can apply for bail, that's a prison sentence. He may be the worst. He may be the worst murderer. He may be a murderer who has committed the most heinous offense, but he has his rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I know lawyers say these things, and freedom-loving people can't understand why we do, but that is our training. That is how the Constitution speaks.
Yes.
And we must allow the Constitution to speak. But I'm just explaining to you, Marcia, the development of the law in this area.
Yes.
That from time to time, Parliament has tried to solve a problem. And as I've said, I say again, the problem has been that of firearms being used to commit offenses and being used to murder people. That is a social problem. Everybody knows it is a problem. There are some communities, gunshots going off every night. How must people relate to that? How must the government respond to that? And the government must respond to it by the legislative response of which I spoke. Pass a law to make society safe for people. And that's why we're here. That's why we were here on Tuesday. I like to be honest and objective in my opinions, so that I don't think that it is any malice or mischief that brought the government to Parliament on Tuesday. Government is responding to a crisis, a social crisis. Government is responding to the social unrest. Of course, one of them got up in there and said that the AG never said that there was social unrest, but that's an issue we are going to prove otherwise shortly. There is social unrest in Barbados, and that's why government came to Parliament on Tuesday. They are trying to resolve a problem. My response to that is that what they've done is insufficient. What they have done is insufficient. First of all, they have brought an entirely new piece of legislation. They would call it an entirely new piece of legislation. Mrs. Weeks, I said it before and I'll say it again. This new legislation has not done much that was done much. It hasn't changed much from the old legislation. I hold a view that there's something sinister going on there. You know, when I spoke, I accused the government of not doing enough. Now, I have a view as to why government, and I accuse them of being cowardly, because the Parliament, in passing laws, must pass laws to protect the majority. And I accuse the government, yes, the government has not done enough to protect the citizens of this country against the high incidence of firearms offenses. Now, let me pause and raise a question or an issue. Government, by its own admission on Tuesday, say that this legislation, this new act, came from South Africa. Now, if I told you that government brought a piece of legislation to Parliament and they lifted it from Nazi Germany, that would alarm you.
Right.
You would find it offensive and distasteful.
Yeah, that they would take something because of the kind of regime
society.
Society that it is.
Precisely, because as I said, legislation must be judged. The quality of legislation must be judged according to the environment in which it is made. The law is not legislation is not purely legal. Legislation is social, it is political, it is cultural. Legislation, the quality of legislation is determined by the environment, its larger social and political and cultural environment. So that laws from South Africa, if it is apartheid to South Africa, must necessarily have been influenced by the problem of racial apartheid in South Africa.
So hold
More
a
than
minute,
one.
Mr. Thorne. Are you saying here that
Mhm.
this legislation, that it was drafted based on the Bail Act of South Africa?
Yes, yes. And the government admitted that. More than once, the government was asked. Now, the Attorney General admitted that it came from South Africa. And the member who spoke, I spoke after him, and the member who spoke after me admitted that it came from South Africa. More than once, I believe, even after I sat, I shouted across and asked them, is it legislation drafted in South Africa prior to Mandela's release? Because if it is drafted prior to Mandela's release, and he was released around what, 89, 90? It necessarily is apartheid law. It is apartheid legislation, even if it has the substance of justice in parts of it. There's something politically incorrect about borrowing a statute, borrowing an act of parliament, borrowing a law from a country that has a history of social and racial injustice. There's something repugnant about that.
Yes.
You don't do that. Now, let me say to you, Marcia, that it is not unusual for a parliament to borrow laws from another parliament. It happens all the time. To be quite frank with you, it happens with us too often. Because you would have had, for example, our Companies Act. I think that may have come from Australia, Canada. So that a lot of legislation you borrow from other countries. A lot of our legislation came from England, Australia, Canada. Sometimes they go as far as Ireland, and New Zealand sometimes. The point is, you go across the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. So there is a committee of parliaments within the Commonwealth, and they borrow legislation from each other. So there's nothing wrong with that in principle. It would be a case of following a good example. If Australia has legislation that is working for them, their Commonwealth country, Westminster system and so on, we borrow that. In fact, let me seize the opportunity to say a lot of our family law was borrowed from Australia. I don't think the public knows that, but a lot of our family law, the Family Law Act, which has worked very, very well between 1982 and the present, much of that came from Australia with a lot of local input, though. The concept of the union other than a marriage, I think credit for that goes to former appeal justice Errol Chase. So that you had local intellectual creativity influencing the drafting of laws. But the point I'm making is there's nothing wrong in principle with borrowing good legislation from other countries. But there must be something wrong and morally repugnant about borrowing an act of parliament from an apartheid regime. What I did notice when I raised the question, when I asked the question, I tried to do it politely, and I got no answer. All I heard, it come from South Africa. None of them. I said, but the government is under a moral and political obligation to say whether this act of parliament was lifted from South Africa during its apartheid days.
Yeah.
If it has been lifted from South Africa during its apartheid days, it is morally repugnant. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't sell that to a Barbadian public.
No. They
No,
need to. Did they actually say whether it was?
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making, Mrs. Weeks. The question was asked. I asked the question on my feet, and perhaps in breach of the standing orders of the parliament. I wanted to know. I asked, could you say if this law came out of apartheid Africa? Tell us the year. Mrs. Weeks, up to now, they have not said. Up to now, they have not said. Barbadians can draw the inference. I say, look, if this law perhaps was drafted and passed in South Africa during its democratic days, let's say 2000 onwards, when you had a parliament that was truly representative of South Africa in terms numerically and in terms of political and economic power and so on, then we would find it more acceptable, but not apartheid South Africa.
So question here, because I know
Yes,
some people
please.
are going to go to research the
Yes.
original law from South Africa, what that they've used,
Mhm.
where they borrowed the new Bail Act from. Is it called the Bail Act in South Africa, or is it called another name?
I am not sure. But I will research that. That. And you can as well. We can do it in tandem. And we will try to discover. I am not certain that it is apartheid law. I'm just asking the question.
Right, because
And we're all entitled to ask the question because, as I said, a law is not an entirely legal instrument. A law is social, it's political, and it is cultural. It is colored and influenced by the larger environment in which it is shaped, in which it finds life. And quite often, you cannot carve justice. You cannot carve a just law out of an unjust society. It is difficult to do because unjust societies make laws to fit the injustice of the society. So that you don't, I was about to use an example, but I wouldn't use that one. The old people used to say you couldn't, you don't pick peas out of manure. Only what bird does that? I don't know. But that's what the old people used to say. You can't pick a good pea out of a good pea, the bean that you eat. If the bean is in manure, the bean becomes a part of the manure. Yeah. So that is the first challenge that we issue to government, to say what is the origin of this law, whether it
and
emerged.
you're not asserting that it is. You're asking.
I'm not asserting.
On behalf of the people of Barbados,
I think Barbadians have a right to know that, and they have not said. So that when they came to Parliament on Tuesday, that is one of the criticisms I make, based on their failure to answer the question. Now, to come to the act itself, as I've said, the act, I described it as cowardly. And I described it as cowardly for this reason. As I've said, it does not confront the problem that is facing this country. The new act does little more than the old act.
Why is that? You said you believe that it's not protecting the majority. That means it's protecting the minority. Who is that minority? What are you talking about?
It is as sinister as that.
Wow.
And that is why I use the word cowardly. Why has not the government, and that is why I said what I said, Mrs. Weeks. If a court, if you fear the issue of constitutionality, if you fear that to be resolute, and that's the word I used, if you don't wish to be resolute, amend the Constitution properly. As you stated that the act would do, but they did not do it. And that is why I referred to section 49(6) of the Constitution earlier. Yes. There is nothing in the act that says this act amends the Constitution. So I am charging the government with being cowardly, with saying that it would do something and not doing it. Why is the government not doing it? They're saying that they would alter the Constitution, amend the Constitution. Now, I cited the example of the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. Nobody, no landlord could go to court and say, but you've passed a law that is unconstitutional, the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. The reason he could not do that is because the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act stated in the body of the act itself that it was an exception to the Constitution, that it was amending the Constitution insofar as tenantries were concerned. This act did not do that. And the government must tell the people of Barbados why they chose not to do that. And we are going to accuse them of something very sinister. That they're being soft. That they're being cowardly. That's what I accuse them of. And people can draw their own conclusions. And that is why I told them, we've sat down in this country for the last 3 years, going into 3 years, claiming that we're a republic. The answer is yes, we're a republic. Because what we did, we repatriated the Constitution by having our head of state described as president, and she became the head of state. Dame Sandra Mason became head of state of this country. So to that extent, we are now of the status of entire self-governance. Yeah, we are no longer tied to the monarchy. So we became a republic. Except that in very cosmetic ways, we have altered the Constitution. For example, we no longer say Crown lands, we say state lands. We no longer say government house, we say state house.
Right.
We no longer say the Royal Barbados Police Force, we say the Barbados Police Service. So a lot of it has been cosmetic. But I don't want it to be said that I say that we are not a republic. We are a republic, and we are a republic on the legal theory of what we call presidentialism. If you name your head of state a president, whereas she used to be called a governor general, you are a republic. You are a republic by presidentialist amendment to the Constitution. But you have to go further. I said then, and I say again tonight on your show, that we are the only country in the world, as far as I know, that has gone republic and has remained republic for 3 years without an entire constitutional overhaul. That is wrong. That is wrong. We have had the chance in this country for the last 3 years to make ourselves genuinely and substantially a republic. We have refused to do it. I don't know why we have refused to do it. So that the point I was making is that if we introduce a new constitution embracing all of our social, political, and cultural values, and those values would include the right of a society to live in peace. Yes, which would make unlawful or which would allow a parliament to pass laws of a certain quality
I see what
to
you're
preserve
saying.
the peace.
Yes.
Yes, so we have had the chance to have a new constitution expressing a new political value system, political, social, and cultural value system, which would further permit Parliament to pass laws, to pass a Bail Act that is in accordance with a new Republican Constitution. That's the point I was making. So that we are here plodding along, trying to pass new laws with an old constitution. Yes, with a constitution that every time they try to pass a law, the court is striking it down. The court is striking it down because they're saying it does not accord with the fundamental rights. And I go beyond fundamental rights in the Constitution because it does not accord with the political and legal values, because that is what a constitution is about. A constitution, broadly speaking, apart from establishing the institutions of state, a constitution embraces your entire cultural value system. That is why, for example, at the beginning of a constitution, you would talk about the respect for God, because we have been a Christian and religious society, so that the Constitution itself would speak about the supremacy and the acknowledgement and the respect for God. So that is part of the expression. When I say a Constitution embraces your entire cultural value system, and your entire cultural value system includes people's belief in God,
Yes.
people's respect for God, people's respect for religious values. That's stated in the Constitution. So that I make the point again, Mrs. Weeks, a constitution embraces an entire cultural value system.
Mhm.
And it will speak about the right to life, the right to peace, all those things, the right to a peaceful existence. And if the question of if what these young men are doing is disrupting the peace, you have an entirely new constitution, as was done in other countries. Trinidad, when they went republic, they sat and crafted their own constitution.
Mhm.
Guyana sat and crafted their own constitution. In fact, they did it twice. And the new constitution in Guyana, for example, reads fundamentally differently from the Westminster Constitution that they would have had before, similar to what we have here. So that I was challenging the government to have a new constitution, so that you can accommodate the making of laws in Parliament. Now, I have to explain that and tell you why I relate the Constitution to the power of Parliament to make laws in Parliament like the Bail Act. When a Constitution is made, it is the supreme law.
Right.
Parliament, yes, it is the supreme law. And in fact, Section 1 of the Constitution describes the Constitution as the supreme law. Why is it called the supreme law? It's because no law that is made in the country, whether by Parliament or whether it is regulations made by a minister, no law made in the country must be inconsistent with that Constitution.
But Mr. Thorne, pause
Yes,
a minute,
please.
because
Yes.
I mean, I am learning so much between you and Lynette. I don't know about others. I never studied law, nothing like that, but I'm learning so much tonight. You guys are great teachers. Let me ask the people, do you guys understand what is really happening here, Barbados? Do you realize, are you listening? Are you listening? So let me just summarize what your issues. You're saying that the Bail Act is not sufficient. You believe
No, it is not.
that it is
It is not.
it is
It is not.
protecting a minority. It's not
Well,
protecting a majority.
Mrs.
Let
Weeks,
me-
you're going a
okay,
little farther than I am.
okay,
But
it
I
is
am saying to you, I am suspicious as to the content of this Bail Act. I am not satisfied. One, that it has done much more than the existing Bail Act, and I am not satisfied that it will succeed, that it is enough to resolve the issue of repeated offenders. I'll tell you this, it is putting the responsibility back on the judges. Under the existing Bail Act, passed in 2001, they shoved everything on the judge. The judge must sit down there and he determines whether a man should get bail. Once, twice, three times. And clearly there are men who have got it once, twice. They've got it once and twice. Let's say once and twice. There are men in this country who got bail twice on two separate occasions under the existing Bail Act, which gave the judge a whole set of factors which he could take into account before he granted that bail. This new Bail Act is doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, wow.
It is just passing the responsibility on to judges again. My position is, why did not the government, the AG says he's not afraid of the courts, why did not the government go back to its original position and make bail, if not impossible, extremely difficult by parliamentary statement, by a statement, by a section in the Bail Act? What this Bail Act has done, it has not done anything fundamentally different from the existing Bail Act. It has not. It is, as I said on Tuesday, it is exporting the responsibility back into the courts so that the judge must now sit down and have an entire trial. A man comes for bail application, the lawyers will tell you that a bail application lasts 5, 10, 15 minutes. Now, a judge must sit down there and have a mini trial. You can even take evidence as to whether a man should get bail or not. The point I'm making is that under this Bail Act, bail is still possible. Bail is still possible for a man who has committed a murder and commits a second one. And Barbadians need to understand that.
Yeah.
This act has not made it exceedingly difficult. Or let me put it the other way,
Yeah.
so that
So-
Barbadians understand where we are tonight with this new proposed legislation.
So Mr.
It is
Thorne,
still
I know-
possible for a man to get bail in this country if he has committed 2 murders. It is still legally possible. I thought that Barbadians wanted that to end. And I thought the government wanted that to end. And that's why I said the legislation is cowardly. There may be sinister reasons
Mhm.
as to why. But this Bail Act is not necessarily protecting the peace and order in this country. And that's the difficulty I have with it. I don't have constitutional difficulty with it because I have said, and I want to explain to Barbadians who may not have heard what I said on Tuesday. I mean, I'm no high authority on these matters. I just express an opinion. In the United States, for example, or in some states in the United States, a man commits murder. The legal regime is that you fit him into degrees. 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree manslaughter.
Mm.
And that is stated in legislation. I have proposed that for Barbados. I spoke about that, I think, as far back as 2018.
Right.
Of course, my voice had far less influence then than it has now. But I spoke about that in 2018. I think either 2018 or 2019. I could double check, but I think it's 2018. I proposed then that we introduce an act of parliament that created degrees of murder. A man commits murder, he's arrested, and the police place him into the category. You know almost immediately, if it is one of the heinous offenses, he's charged for 1st degree murder.
Mm.
And look, a parliament is there to pass laws. So that for 1st degree murder, you pass a law, you say he will not get bail. He shall not get bail. 2nd degree murder, perhaps. Bail is considered. 3rd degree murder, perhaps. But anytime a man is charged for 1st degree, no question, no bail. So I propose that. Degrees of murder, so that the police themselves, who have investigated the offense, who know intimately how the offense took place, they establish the categories, and in establishing the category within which to place that accused person, they can determine whether he gets bail or not. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, you can't have a man chopping off a man's head in public
Mhm.
and get him bail. I mean, either he's mad, and if it is malice, 1st degree murder. And he knows exactly what is going to happen. That is a legal system. That is not peculiar to what I'm proposing. That happens in other countries. The question of bail is allied or connected to the severity or the seriousness of the offense. There's nothing uncivilized about that. In fact, it is very civilized that people who commit the most heinous offenses should expect, and the society should demand, that that quality of person should be remanded. But the government has not had that new constitution, so that is part of the problem. They have loitered on the premises of Parliament, and they have plodded along for 3 years and have been unable to give this country a new constitution.
Why do
Amidst
you
all the
think
pretty
they're
talk.
loitering around? Why do you think they're going around it and not presenting the Constitution? Because it's creating a problem. You can't, as you're saying, the judges will strike it down. I don't understand why.
Well,
Why do
I don't
you
know.
think
I don't know if the judges will strike it down. What I'm saying, because to be frank with you, I myself don't see. I have read it. I mean, I suppose as I said earlier, lawyers will have their opinions as to which section is unconstitutional. I don't see unconstitutionality in it, but I could be wrong. What I see in the act that I will continue to criticize is a position in which bail has not been made more difficult. When I saw this, I was disappointed. I said, well, they're bringing something now to make bail more difficult, because if you have third-time murderers on the streets, you have to make bail more difficult. Everybody knows that is the issue here. The government knows that is the issue. So why not bring legislation that makes bail more difficult? And as I have said, bail could have been validly, legitimately, and constitutionally made more difficult for people of that category of wrongdoing if you had a constitution which permitted it.
Right. No,
So you don't have the new constitution. You're operating under an old constitution, and you're bringing laws which the judges have struck down for being unconstitutional, for being inconsistent with the constitution that you have. When you have had the chance since 2020, what it was when you went Republic, you've had that chance since 2021 to
look at the
to have a
question on there.
constitution.
Jonathan Clark is asking, and this will be our final thing because it's after 10, but it is so
Oh, I
interesting.
didn't know it was so late. I'm sorry.
But it's so interesting. Why is it taking so long then? This new constitution is so important.
Very important. Very important. As I
Very
say,
important. So
a
why is it taking so
constitution
long?
reflects your cultural value system. And the people in Barbados are entitled to ask for a constitution which defines the rights, the interests, and the entitlements of the majority of peace-loving people. And you are not defending the rights, interests, and entitlements of peace-loving people if you're going to have weak legislation that allows men again to commit 1 and 2 murders and get out on bail. And I make bold to say that.
But why are they taking so long? Why do you think it is that they don't have the time?
I heard towards the end of the debate, I think the Prime Minister spoke, and I was very unhappy to hear that she said we probably would not have that new constitution in 1, 2, 3, nor 4 months. I think that is what I heard, so that one cannot expect to have that new constitution this year. And I don't think they're going to bring it as a Christmas gift for anybody. So that is hampering legal development in Barbados. That is hampering statutory development in Barbados, because we're no man's land. Constitutionally, we are in no man's land. And here we are trying to pass laws, claiming to be a republic, but those laws are colliding with the Westminster Constitution. And who can be blamed for that? The only body that takes the blame for that is the government. They're paid to be government. They're paid to be parliament. They're paid to pass laws. I say that they've loitered on the premises of parliament. And all these tinkering with legislation. And you passing legislation and the people rebelling against it. Or you taking it to court and the court striking it down. They struck down the a section in the Sexual Offences Act. A section, and I'm going to go back with this. The court struck down a section of the Sexual Offences Act which protects children against sexual predators. You know, I believe, Mrs. Weeks, I believe that was in 2022. And it is a simple amendment that needs to be made to the Sexual Offences Act to protect children against predators. You know, up to this day, the government has not amended it.
And I remember they promised.
They promised a few weeks ago, one of the MPs said that it is with some, I'm not going to name the body, but he said it is with the Law Reform Commission. I think that's what he said. A simple amendment. I can sit down and write it in 2 minutes.
So why?
That's why you determine loitering on the premises of Parliament.
But Mr. Thorne, it makes you wonder something as important as that, to protect the children against sexual offenses. You're going to tell me
against sexual predators.
So people who
Yeah.
want to
Gross
jerk off in front
indecency,
of
acts
children.
of gross indecency committed against children. The court struck it down, and it was a correct decision. Technically, it was a correct decision, but it means that in terms of that offense, the child is no longer, the child has lost, children in Barbados have lost the protection of the Sexual Offences Act because the government has refused to amend the Sexual Offences Act to protect little children in this country. People think I get emotional about these things and I get dramatic. You know, they think so. But this is serious business. When 2 years later, you cannot do a simple amendment to the Sexual Offences Act to protect children. You're a parent, Mrs. Weeks, I'm one. And we know what is going on in the society.
Yeah, lots of pedophilia. I mean, this is really, Mr. Thorne. I tell you, every time I hear you, I tell you, I thank God. Please, I always send a message to say thank your family, because I know you're taking time away from your family, from your business, from your wife, from your relationships, you know, to be doing this kind of work. And I understand it. Dave and I, we understand it, sir. And every time you speak, you sound
want
like
to thank Dave for the prayers. He knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
And he prays for you all the time, because he, as a father, when we hear you, we hear the fatherly heart coming out. And I tell you, I don't care what they do to me. I will support you to the hilt, because look at what you're doing. And you know what, those of you that are listening, he had to be a lawyer to be able to do this. And the level the level of law and the understanding that he has. He had to be that. And you're going to tell me we're going to sit by and criticize this man? We have to support him. He's there to help us. And he's not paying me to say this. You know?
Well,
I
Mrs.
tell
Weeks,
Anybody can hear me? Am I
by
hearing?
your compliment, but I look, before I go, I want to ask the government why it has not been more resolute in bringing a law to repeat offenders. I make no apology for asking for a law that protects the majority of people in this country who have lived in fear over the last 2 months. That is what Parliament is there for. That is what Parliament is there for. And the government has to explain to the people of Barbados, I'm going to use a term that is normally used, why have they been so soft? There's something very sinister here. Why I am accusing this government of being soft on crime. I've gone as far as to do that. And I don't do that in the air. I do that based on what I have seen in this legislation that came to Parliament this week. I read it before I got there. I compared it against the 2001 legislation. And I said, what's new? What's new? And there is no section in this new legislation that says the Constitution is hereby amended. It has not changed any constitutional provision. It has not altered any fundamental right given by the Constitution so that the people of this country can be protected. And I will end by saying that under this new legislation, it is still possible for repeat murderers to get bail. Let the public understand that. Yeah. It is still possible for repeat offenders to get bail. I went there preparing to hear that there is some law that will make it impossible. And I don't make apology for that, because that reflects the interests of the people in this country.
Yes.
That if crime is now localized to a specific community, because the fact that we have repeat offenders means that the murders are being committed by a specific and small community. It isn't to say that 1,500 people running across Barbados shooting each other. It's not that. The public must be protected against a specific community. You know, we've had the kinds of offenses committed around here that, I mean, at 9 o'clock in the morning, at midday, at 3 o'clock. Is not the public entitled to be unfair? Is not the public entitled to ask the parliament to provide them protection? It isn't that we want to sit in condemnation of criminal wrongdoers. We want protection. And we have to turn to the parliament for protection. And I'm accusing the parliament of failing to protect the people of Barbados against this kind of activity that has terrified the people of this country over the last few years, and particularly over the last 3 months. That's why I said it is cowardly. And that's why I said at the end of my speech, the same government that appears, and I'm going to be very careful how I say this, the government appears to be interfering in the internal workings of the Barbados Police Service. They appear to be doing that when they have no business there. So they can involve themselves in naming squads and sections of the police force. They can appear to be interfering in the running of the police force, but they can interfere in the lives of criminal wrongdoers in a way that would satisfy the people of this country. Bail should have been made more difficult than this act purports to make it. It does not make it any more or less difficult than the existing 2001 legislation. That's what I accuse the government of, being cowardly. And the people of Barbados will have to judge why. Why is this government so soft on the question of bail? This new legislation has done nothing, I repeat, it has done nothing or very little more or less than the previous legislation, than the existing legislation. We're still back in the hands of a court. We're still back in the hands of a judge. We're still going out there and living according to judicial discretion. If a judge feels that the man should get bail, he can give him bail. Under this new legislation, under the old legislation, the judge could give bail. Under this new legislation, he can give bail. Where does that leave the citizens of Barbados who are expecting a lot more? As I said, it has all been a mountain in labor, and it has given birth to a mouse.
Mr. Thorne, I love it. Well, oh my goodness, it is 10:12, and we only because of the time we're going to stop. But sir, oh my goodness, this has been there's a lot here that we need to we need to be diligent in. There's a lot of research that we need to be doing on our own. There's also I did try to get the bar association to come on, and I'm going to keep at them. I'm going to keep at them to get them on. I did try to get Trisha Watson to come on, and she wasn't able to. I tried to get as many lawyers as possible that I could get. I want to thank Lynette Eastman and thank Ralph Thorne for being on tonight. It has been school for me, and I hope that you have learned a lot. It's making a lot of sense for me, Mr. Thorne, and a lot for us to dissect. And I think we are figuring out loyal opposition, what our next march and roadside parliaments need to really be on. I think we're figuring it out. By the end of this week, we should be able to understand exactly what it's all about. Thank God for you, Mr. Thorne. Thank God for your two senators. Thank God for the independent senators and everybody, the Bar Association. Look, there was a time when we had nobody speaking up. But we have so much going on now. And we give God thanks, Mr. Thorne, and we know you're not alone. God bless you.
Thank you.
As we go, I want to tell people about the Walk Holy Band. You're talking a lot about morality and all of the social changes. And here we are, Mr. Thorne, with our Walk Holy Band. I hope you will come and walk with us. The Walk Holy Band, because we have on clothes. Look at our costume.
That was my next question. I was wondering if you were attiring yourself like the other bands.
No. Look at our costumes. And let me tell you, before we used to win prizes, and then because we decided that we were not going to pick a number, We wanted to remain number one. Then the band leaders ganged up on us when we started to win. One year we won all the prizes in the small category. And they decided to gang up on us and said, no, you're winning money. And therefore you got to put your hand in the bag and you got to pick a prize, right? You got to pick a number, but we didn't want to pick the number because in the middle of the band, then we get caught up. People wanted to walk up on us, descend, and all these kind of things. So we decided we wanted to be number one. And with that, we could no longer vie for prizes, but we used to win. Ask them at the NCF. We used to win a whole set of prizes because we have material. We can create. We can, we have the dancers, the presentations, the theatrics. We were winning the prizes, and they got mad with us.
Mrs. Weeks, just today we had a discussion that carnival has its roots in Roman Catholicism.
Yes.
And crop over is meant to have its roots in agriculture, the crop. That's why we call it crop over. And by its expressions, by its images, we seem to be moving away from the original idea of crop over being associated with the freedom of a crop that was over. And perhaps we need to embrace the original meaning and to reflect that in costumes, to reflect that in the songs, to reflect that. And it is quite possible. And I think the 50th anniversary would have been a great time to reflect and to go back to the original meaning in terms of costumes, in terms of sound.
What to discuss tomorrow. I think we need to look at that. We need to look at that because, that is why when I can understand exactly what you're saying, because before we started this band, we went and did the research. And that's why we understood what we were doing and that we knew we were part of Revelry. You see, because we had the education on what it was all about.
Yes.
So I will touch base with you on the person. Probably there's somebody with some more history, but these are some of the things we do on the road. We give out care packages, school supplies. So it's for us. It's much more than the music and the prayer and all of that and the costuming. It's a time to model something that is wholesome and to be of benefit to our society. And it's an answer. That's what we're about. Dave and I are about being answers. We are Christians.
Yes, you can speak to Trevor Marshall about the history of the festival.
Could you repeat that?
You could probably speak to Trevor Marshall. He is one of our noted social historians.
Yes, I know. He wasn't. We tried to reach him. I'll tell you. I'm not sure how he's doing. But
I see. I'm sorry. Yeah, I did hear that. But you could speak to the band leaders as well. I met Mr. Chase today for the first time. I think Trevor is associated. Yeah. The old. I don't know if it minds being called the older ones.
I know. I know who is. I know.
Yeah, they could tell you. They could tell you about the evolution of the festival in terms of costuming and sounds and so on. The songs used to be so funny and innocent. Now the songs you gotta save the children's ears
from the song. But that same Trevor Chase, I remember one year he won all the large band prizes, and he said to us,
really?
You see what happened? I followed you guys and I put some more material on my
excellent.
People. And so I'm gonna call him. You can if you can get the number, pass my number to him. But
no, I don't know him. I just was introduced to him today at an event.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we have a history with him. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
You can come out to the Walk Holy Band, Mr. Thorne, and everybody who is coming, come out. You don't have to you can be on the truck and wave to the people. All right? Okay, everybody.
Oh, you have a truck.
We have a truck. What is wrong with you? We have a truck, Mr. Thorne.
Well, you called it Walk Holy, so I didn't assume that you had a vehicle.
What?
I was focusing on the walk.
That's funny. Listen, no, we have a big music truck. You see our big music truck?
Oh,
right there.
Lovely.
That's our big music truck.
Okay.
Yeah, we're serious.
So that's an open invitation. Is that a serious invitation?
Yes, it is a serious one, sir.
Okay. Thank
and,
you.
and everybody needs to come down. They can come down and be part of this this activity where we model something that's wholesome and that lifts up society. We sing songs, cultural songs, and everything is culturally based. You're not going to hear anything North American out there, but it's wholesome. We
Okay, thank
even do
you.
from plastic bag. If Little Rick sings a good song, we play it. If
Mhm.
Adrian Green's Adrian Reed's Adrian, I can't
Clark,
remember his
Clark,
name.
Clark.
Clark, yes, we play it. You know, we
Mhm.
play Adrian Clark's Walk Holy Virgin. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, we do all of that, and because we want to be culturally relevant but wholesome and clean, and that's
Yes.
what we do. Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yes.
All right.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for being being here with us tonight. We've been saying that I'm not closing, so let's close properly. Dave, play the cross the floor, and let us close and get Mr. Thorne in his bed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, well, Dave is bringing up the song.
Come forward, walk out. This one I got worldwide.
Just days after former government backbencher Ralph Thorne crossed the floor, he's taken the oath of office as leader of the opposition.
Cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Wait there, Ralph Thorne. Dancing come back again. Our turn is the latest trend. Everybody know link up a friend. This one designed to be
And more will be left over.
Dancing come back again. Our turn is the latest.
Are these trips so important?
Link up a friend. This one designed for the women and men.
Yes, I'm for real, member. I am for real.
And I can't decide, so I'm moving with
Don't let me talk out your business. Don't let me talk out your business. All right.
And I can't decide, so I'm moving with the die. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. So let me do this now. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. Yes, yes. And let me go now. Cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor.
There has to be some order here.
Cross the floor, let me do it some more like Ralph.
The Minister of Finance is not party to this present transaction, Your Honor. Ask him to keep quiet, please. And I say to you further, Mr. Speaker, that my conscience, my location here is related to my conscience. I said it last year. It is well with my soul.
Take a wine on the left side, and I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide, moving with the tide. Take a wine on the right side, take a wine on the left side, and I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. So let me do this now. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. Yeah, yeah. And let me go now. Cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne.
That is my man. So whether he cross or in cross, he will always be there for us.
I came to a point where I had to take the decision that if my philosophical and political views do not accord with those of government in terms of its legislation, in terms of its policy, the relationship becomes untenable.
Okay, so that's it, guys. Good night. And Judith Jilks, I know you were there dancing, and I hope that dancing was a good dance. Pastor Ferdinand is going to come for you. All right, guys. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
And thank you all for joining. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.